first of all, Your Excellence, thank you so much for making time to give this interview to Qalampir.uz. And we always support we always appreciate the constant support by the US government and US Embassy in Tashkent for freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and independent media in Uzbekistan. And your predecessor, Mr. Rosenblum, was in our office before the end of his term, and also he shared sincere thoughts and gave final interview to Qalampir.uz. So we hope we can turn this into a tradition with you.
I think it's a great idea.
And we want to give you the first question. We have so many questions about the foreign policy of Uzbekistan and the situation with human rights in Uzbekistan. So to begin with, what is the current situation between the United States of America and Uzbekistan today?
Well, let me first begin by saying that we do believe that media freedom and independent media are fundamentally important. And particularly at this point in time, I think, as President Mirziyoyev is continuing his reform program here, we believe that organizations like yours have a critical role to play. And so it's my pleasure to be with you here today. In terms of our relationship with Uzbekistan, I'm pleased to say that our relationship has never been better. As you probably know, Secretary of State Blinken was just here a few weeks ago. He had meetings with the foreign minister, with the president. I participated in those meetings, and really we covered the full range of economic, security, political, human rights issues. And we've never had, I think, such a meaningful and robust conversation. And both sides agreed during these meetings that we see enormous potential in continuing to strengthen our relationship.
Thank you. The president of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, in one of his speeches, said that the big states, big countries, are asking Uzbekistan to choose a side. Is it related to the recent visit of the US State Secretary, Mr. Blinken, to Uzbekistan?
Well, as I said, I participated in all of Secretary Blinken's visits, and absolutely not. At no point did we say anything like that. Quite the contrary. Secretary Blinken reiterated our strong support for Uzbekistan's independence. And we understand that Uzbekistan must have the ability to have productive and positive relationships with all of its neighbors, and we are just proud to be one of Uzbekistan's partners.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Blinken said that US will support Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan to overcome the effects of sanctions imposed on Russia. As you know, there are millions of Uzbek working migrants in Russia, and the money that they send to Uzbekistan is a serious part of our economy. So is the United States ready to increase the quantities of Uzbek working migrants or with green cards, with employment visas?
So we want to see as many Uzbeks as possible have an opportunity to travel to the United States. And since you mentioned green cards, I think, as you know, there's a large and growing population of Uzbek Americans living in the United States as well. So we want to see more and more tourists go. We want to see more business people go back and forth. This kind of exchange, people-to-people exchange, is critical to a healthy bilateral relationship. But as far as work issues, our focus here at the request of President Mirziyoyev is to focus on helping to develop the economy here in Uzbekistan, to create more jobs for Uzbeks so that they can stay here in Uzbekistan. And so we have programs that are focused on job skills training. We have programs that are focused on encouraging entrepreneurship, helping to grow businesses here, helping to increase Uzbekistan's ability to export goods and services abroad. And so we think that Uzbeks shouldn't have to go overseas to work, that they should be able to find good, excellent, high-paying jobs here in Uzbekistan.
Thank you. As you know, as we know, the world is moving towards two poles, like in the Cold War period. The recent visit of a Chinese leader, Xi Jinping, to Russia is indicating that China is taking sides with Russia. So what can we expect from this century in global politics?
So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the next century, of course, but I will say that the United States and its partners around the world support I think an international system that is based on democracy, on human rights, on free markets, on free trade, and on respect for independence and sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries. Russia has violated those principles with its aggression, violent aggression in Ukraine. And we hope that we can continue to work with the international community to ensure that that kind of behavior is not tolerated, is not permitted. So I don't know what will happen in the future, but we are eager to partner with all countries, including Uzbekistan, to continue to strengthen an international system that is good for all of us.
Thank you. As you know, protests took place in Karaka, Pakistan, in Nukus, in the city of Nukus, last year in July. So the government quickly acknowledged the situation and rolled back the constitutional reforms. And then it was reported that there was a foreign influence. So how do you evaluate the demonstrations in Karaka, Pakistan, and were there any external threats to Uzbekistan, or how satisfactory and transparent was the judicial process in Karaka, Pakistan?
So first, let me begin by saying that we believe it's important that in any democracy that people should have the right to peacefully demonstrate. And so that's an important fundamental right, and we support that. As far as the protests, the demonstrations in Karaka, Pakistan, I of course don't have all of the details. I would like to see more transparency. I understand that the ombudsman did an investigation and prepared a report, but we still haven't seen the ombudsman's report yet. I think that should be made public. As far as the trials, we were encouraged by there was greater transparency and openness with regard to these trials, and we think that's a positive step. And we think that as the trials continue, there should continue to be more transparency. I think, of course, we think anybody who used violence, of course, should be punished. But that applies not just to the protesters, but also to law enforcement, that it may have used violence as well. We understand from the government of Uzbekistan's statements that there are some law enforcement individuals who are involved in these protests who are being investigated. We believe that those investigations should be completed and that any violations should also be brought to trial, and those people should be brought to justice as well.
Thank you. As it was announced earlier, a referendum on introducing amendments to the current constitution will soon be held in Uzbekistan. And according to this, Uzbekistan is expected to be a social state. And so what is your opinion about the new constitution? What can this new constitution bring to Uzbekistan?
So we're studying the constitutional referendum very closely. We see a lot of positive changes in the constitutional referendum. We see greater protections for workers, with greater protections for women. There's a greater separation of powers and more power being given to the Oli Mejlis. These are all very, very positive changes. Whether or not a constitution is ultimately changed, of course, is up to the citizens of Uzbekistan. And what we think is important, if and when this constitution is changed, that these changes in writing are not just in writing, that these changes are implemented in real life. And we look forward to supporting Uzbekistan in these and all of its reforms.
Thank you. In this point, we want to know about your opinion about the nullification of presidential term and like a possible re-election of the current president, Shavkat Mirziyoyev. What can you say about this?
So, of course, it's up to the citizens of Uzbekistan to pick its own political leaders and to set the terms under which those political leaders are able to run for election. That's not ultimately a decision for us. What we would like to see, I think, in Uzbekistan is, as President Mirziyoyev has already indicated, we'd like to see more and more room for freedom of speech, for freedom of expression, for freedom of media, and ultimately for there to be room for people of differing political views to coexist in the political space here. And so ultimately, we believe that in any democracy that people need to be able to have a choice of their leaders, and ultimately that's what we support.
Thank you. As we know, USA is one of the countries that is known for its support for freedom of speech, human rights, women's rights, and children's rights. So how do you assess the situation inside the country regarding these rights? And will the things change for the better in the future?
So we've seen a lot of positive changes just in the last few years. We've seen virtual elimination of child labor. We've seen, reduction of elimination of forced labor in the cotton harvest. We've seen greater religious respect for religious freedoms here in Uzbekistan. We've seen, as the president's, acknowledged that there was torture in prisons and has taken steps to reduce torture. These are all very, very positive changes. I believe that the president is serious about continuing these reforms. And so I'm hopeful that the situation here in Uzbekistan will continue to improve.
Thank you. As you know, reports on cases of rape, violence, and harassment against women and girls have gone viral on social networks. So in some cases, these cases were committed by the representatives of state authorities. So how do you assess the situation with women's rights in Uzbekistan? Are they guaranteed?
So we were encouraged to see steps to criminalize domestic violence in the first instance. We think that those types of legal changes are necessary, and more, I think, are needed to continue to strengthen the protections available to women and to children here in Uzbekistan. And we're eager to support those changes. As far as the recent cases you mentioned, obviously this kind of behavior is unacceptable and outrageous, and we think that any individuals who are guilty of rape or abuse of women and children should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Thank you so much for good answers. So in the last point, we want to get opinions from you about Uzbeks and Uzbekistan according to your experience in Uzbekistan. So what can you say about the culture and the hospitality of the people of Uzbekistan?
So I don't know if all of your viewers know, but I spent some time in Uzbekistan many years ago. I did my first diplomatic assignment here in the mid-1990s. And so it's a pleasure to come back to Uzbekistan and to see all of the positive changes and development. Economically, the country is vastly changed and vastly improved, although of course there's much more work to be done. It's great to see more and more foreign tourists coming to Uzbekistan to learn more about the rich culture here and the incredibly rich history that Uzbekistan has. And so really for me, this is a dream job for me to be able to come back to Uzbekistan, to reconnect with this culture and the people here, to spend the next few years traveling all around the country. I just returned from trips to Navai, to Bukhara. I was just yesterday in Nukus and Moynak. I think it's just an amazing country with an amazing culture and amazing people. And I look forward to my next few years here.
Thank you so much for good answers. We hope we can invite you to our editorial office one more time in the future.
It would be my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.